Continuing on from the first passage of Reading Comprehension Drill Set number 6 to its second passage, which starts at number 7, as always, we've got a highlight tool ready to go when we introduce a new passage, and we're going to read the passage on the left, paragraph by paragraph. We're going to highlight the one or maybe two sentences that capture the overall main idea of each paragraph as we go, and then we will address question 7, which does happen to be one of the more common first questions you'll see, which is just something asking for the primary purpose, even though we're not going to address the question until we finish off our upfront read. So, beginning from the top, historian Philippe A, I'm just going to call him A, even though I might be able to pronounce that using my latent French abilities, but we'll just call him PA, claimed that in medieval Europe, childhood was not viewed as a distinct period in human development, with a special character and needs. His argument for this thesis relied heavily on medieval text illustrations which distinguish children from adults principally by their stature, rather than by a distinctively childlike appearance. The children look like miniature adults. A also suggested that high infant mortality rates in the Middle Ages induced indifference towards offspring as a defense mechanism against establishing close ties with infants unlikely to survive. SS's recent research challenges this established conception of the medieval view of childhood. Well, we should recognize that we're going to start talking about SS. Again, not trying to pronounce that name unless I'm absolutely certain of how to do so, but this established conception needs to be highlighted for reference as well, and that's going to come from the first sentence up here, so we can just briskly reread these to confirm that we've got the overall narrative. Historian P.A. claimed that in medieval Europe, childhood was not viewed as a distinct period in human development with a special character needs. SS's recent research challenges this established conception of the medieval view of childhood, and if we need more about PA's view, we'll come back and reread later. So we will now just scroll on down, frame up the next two paragraphs. Shahar has had to work hard to find evidence to support her interpretation of the medieval conception of childhood, since works that reveal parents' personal attitudes such as G.M.'s journal are exceptional. Shahar makes intelligent use of medical writing and theological works, particularly illuminating our medieval accounts of saints' lives, which, despite their emphasis on personal piety, reveal much concerning their subjects' childhoods and which provide evidence of parental concern for children. Even more significant are accounts of saints' miracles involving the healing of sick infants and the blessing of young couples with children. Well, these are the supporting pieces. The opening two sentences best capture what is happening big picture, so we'll highlight those and we'll scroll on down a little bit further. Shahar also discusses the period in childhood from ages 7 to 11 when boys of the wealthier classes were placed in monasteries or as apprentices in the household of a master of a trade. To some, this custom might imply a perception of childhood insufficiently distinguished from adulthood or even indifference to children, evidenced by the willingness to send young children away from home. Shahar points out, however, that training was in stages and children were not expected to live as adults or to assume all the tasks of maturity at once. Furthermore, Shahar quotes a telling number of instances in which parents of apprentices sued masters for maltreatment of their children. Shahar concludes that parents placed their children in monasteries or as apprentices not to be rid of them, but because it was a social norm to ensure one's children of a future niche in society. And once again, I would advocate that the first and last sentences of this paragraph best capture the main idea. Then we'll move on to the final paragraph. Shahar's work is highly persuasive, but as a rebuttal to A, it is uncomfortably incomplete. Shahar succeeds in demonstrating that people in the Middle Ages did view childhood as a definite stage in human development, and that they were not indifferent toward their children, but central to A's position was that the contention that the family as a powerful and private institution organized around children is a relatively modern ideal whose origins related to the growing influence of the middle classes in the post-medieval period. A felt that this implied something novel about the development of perceptions of childhood and of the family. Shahar does not comment on these larger issues, and we know the author's position on Shahar's work ultimately, it's incomplete. And then we've got all of the reasons that the author finds it to be incomplete. So now we'll just reread our highlighted sentences only to confirm that we've got the overall narrative in full before we try to find an answer choice that matches our highlight sentences to determine what the passage is primarily concerned with. Thank you for watching this MyGuru LSAT Reading Comprehension problem explanation video. If you enjoyed the tips that it contains, please consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a member for early and exclusive access to additional practice problem explanation videos using official problems over at lawhub.lsac.org. But for now, let's get back to this explanation. Historian P.A. claimed that in medieval Europe, childhood was not viewed as a distinct period in human development with a special character and needs. S.S.'s recent research challenges this established conception of the medieval view of childhood. Shahar has had to work hard to find evidence to support her interpretation of the medieval conception of childhood, since works that reveal parents' personal attitudes such as G.M.'s journal are exceptional. Shahar makes intelligent use of medical writing and theological works. Shahar also discusses the period in childhood from ages 7 to 11 when boys of the wealthier classes were placed in monasteries or as apprentices in the household of a master of a trade. Shahar concludes that parents placed their children in monasteries or as apprentices not to be rid of them, but because it was a social norm to ensure one's children a future niche in society. Shahar's work is highly persuasive, but as a rebuttal to A, it is uncomfortably incomplete. So, we've got the overall idea. We've got this position of A, that kids in Middle Ages were just miniature adults, and Shahar doesn't really agree with it, and is kind of persuasive, but not fully complete. Overall, I have the main idea at this point. And we look at the answer choices, seeking reasons to eliminate, and we'll mark them with the highlight tool as always as we go, starting with A. Criticizing and dismissing a traditional theory. Well, we don't dismiss A's theory. We know that this rebuttal to A is uncomfortably incomplete, so choice A is extreme and can be eliminated for that reason. Describing and evaluating recent research. Well, yeah, Shahar's research. That seems pretty good. I may not love it, but we'll have to at least leave it open. Reconciling two explanations for the same phenomenon. We don't actually reconcile everything. It still kind of ends up undecided. So we know that the reconciliation isn't complete. So goodbye to choice C again as being a bit too extreme. Then choice D, refuting a recent hypothesis. We don't refute Shahar, so goodbye to choice D. And then summarizing information about an unusual phenomenon. It would probably be extreme to call the phenomenon unusual in the Middle Ages, just different from what we're doing today. And we're not summarizing the information. We're specifically talking about Shahar versus A. So our correct answer is indeed B, and you can see how that upfront read is of paramount importance for this and all main idea style questions, and ultimately the rest of the questions of this passage